Roll Tide, everybody. What do you say? Welcome to Cover Crimson. We got fall camp starting this week. So that's going to be big topic of conversation today. It's so exciting because you can really feel football finally is back. And I mean, we're counting the days down to Bama kicking off against Florida State. Thanks for being here. We're brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Philadelphia, Mississippi. Now's a great time to hit Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, the Azaleas, the Oaks, two awesome courses. You don't need a membership. It's the Augusta you can play. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. And now it's the time of year to go over there, throw on your good rowback gear, and do a little golfing. All right, let's get this show started. And again, how awesome is it that football is finally here? All right, Roll Tide, gang. And there's Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie, Cover Crimson, also Cover Crimson Podcast Network. If you can't watch the show on YouTube, we appreciate you guys being part of what we do. All right, fall camp starts on Wednesday, Clint. I know you're fired up.
I cannot wait. Yeah, was just on the next round with Jim and Taylor and told them, I mean, it's like Christmas, gearing up for Christmas for me, especially with the fact that we're actually going to be getting some media viewing periods. I don't remember. Maybe they did have some at the beginning of last year as well in fall camp. I know we had it last spring. I know we had it this spring. It is going to stop, I think, about a couple of weeks into fall camp. They're going to stop allowing the media viewing periods to happen. But at least in the beginning stages, we'll be able to get our eyes on some of these things and see how guys are looking physically after the weight changes that we've noticed on the roster, and just a bunch of little nuggets that we can get from seeing some of this stuff. And we'll also be getting the press conferences where we can get information. So it's going to be an informative couple of weeks as Alabama starts to gear up for the 2025 season and Florida State in the season opener. Mick, I cannot wait, brother. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I guess the first thing I got to ask you is, what do you expect to be different this year for Coach DeBoer as compared to last year?
I think it's his team. It's more of how he is want to build it. I think he's going to be. We've heard both publicly and privately, it's been a really rough summer for these guys. Nothing was easy. The summer conditioning and just and there was, I think, even. I think Coach DeBoer even talked about guys need to get ready for was it the hardest summer of their lives, or one of the it was some type of comment like that. I think that has been kind of the approach. There's not this, okay, we got to keep guys in the building. We're worried about the transfer portal. It's getting to know guys. It's more of, it's going to be Kalen DeBoer's, Ryan Grubb's, Kane Womack's show. They want things to be player led. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that you always want it to be player led as far as, the enforcers of how things are supposed to be done. And I think Alabama's getting that, but I don't think there will be as much patience or leniency when it comes to guys who are not going about things the right way. And I think there's tremendous buy-in. I think there's been buy-in that, it started in, back in the winter, and then it carried over into the spring. And then you saw it reflected with no guys entering the transfer portal. Now, from everything that we've heard, that's continued on through summer. And, I wouldn't foresee that changing in fall camp or as we get closer to the season.
Well, it's definitely interesting. Like when you look at the Coach DeBoer having that opportunity to go back out there and, and start over with a team that you mentioned is his team. How about from the quarterback perspective, Jalen Milroe compared to what we're going to see with Ty Simpson?
Yeah, that's another question that I was asked on the next round, and I would highly suggest going to check that out if you get a chance. But, I said over there, I think Ty Simpson fits what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb want to do. Just how he likes to win or wants to win. Can he be a little improv-y where he likes to go off script and kind of do some of that backyard football stuff? I mean, we definitely saw it in high school. We've seen it at times, the running and spinning around and throwing it downfield like he did last year We've still seen it on the college level. I don't think you don't want to completely work that out of a guy. You want him to have that ability to kind of make plays and let instinct take over, but being, playing more in structure, winning from the pocket, having the timing of both, it's not just about your vertical passing game. It's the short to intermediate parts of the field, ball placement and accuracy and all those things. Like you want that to be, where your offense can get into a rhythm and guys can create yardage after the catch and do all those things. And I just think Ty Simpson, this is not a shot at Jalen Milroe. That's just, he won a little differently. And he's doing really good things with the Seattle Seahawks from what I've heard. Haven't seen it, obviously, but I mean, reports out of training camp is that he's turning some heads, and I'm pulling for him. I want him to be successful. I know most, if not all, Alabama fans do want him to be successful. Right. But just with what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb want at that position, what Nick Sheridan wanted last year, I just don't think the relationship, the play caller quarterback relationship, from just being comfortable with each other. They love each other. They wanted each other to be successful. There was no kind of hostility. It wasn't intentional or anything. It's just there were some differences. And so I would fully expect that to look a lot different. And I just think that's going to create a lot more of a consistent product, in fall camp and obviously into the season. Question. We do have some mailbag questions. Whenever you're ready, I can start to get into those. I'm like leaving it to you to start that, and I'm the one that's got the question. So
yeah, you're excited about it. Well, let me say this first off. I like where you're going with that. Let me go ahead and throw this up here. Our friend Keith, and Keith, man, love you, brother. Thanks for being part of what we do. Residence Inn by Marriott Ocean City, back to back, coastal style hotel of the year. Boardwalk, fishing tournaments, great seafood, great bars and restaurants, including Secrets, which is their version of the Floribama. And he wants you guys to come up there and make him feel at home. So go there, take advantage of that awesome place. Next Round did their show there, and tell Keith Roll Tide, make him feel good about being a Bama fan in Maryland, and know that we're recruiting there. With that said, we got a great email from Keith, and he asked a question, and you loved it.
I did, yeah. So what he asked was, because in some people that are watching, you might already know, but it's nice. I talk about a lot of these positions in Kane Womack's system or defense or whatever, and a lot of the times I just assume that people know what I'm talking about, and I think he does for sure. But just the nuances of the positions and stuff. So what he asked or what he said was, feel free to teach a class in Alabama's defensive scheme. A year later, I'm still confused as to what a Bandit and Wolf are. And I get this actually quite a bit. So I'm glad that Keith brought this up. So trying to explain the difference between those two, your Bandit is more of your strong side, field side defensive end. And when I say field versus boundary, field is going to be the wide side of the field. Boundary is going to be the shorter side of the field. So your Bandit is to the field side, that what they would view as the strong side. And he's going to be a bigger body guy. He's got to probably be anywhere from 275, 280 pounds-ish typically. You might get a little heavier than that. You might get a little lighter than that. Bama's on both sides of it. But, he's got to be able to stop the run well, but he's also got to be able to win as an edge rusher. Because when you talk about pass rushing opportunities, the Wolf isn't going to get as many because he's spending anywhere from, probably about 25 to 30% of his snaps, maybe a little less than that, depending on the player, but they're playing that off the line of scrimmage. So the guy who's probably getting the most pass rushing opportunities as far as for a position is probably actually the Bandit. So that's a misconception I think a lot of people have, is they think the Wolf needs to be your best pass rusher. And to an extent, as far as your pure pass rusher and the most athletic guy between the two, certainly going to be the Wolf, but the Bandit's got to be able to get after the quarterback because he's getting more opportunities than anybody on that front. So that's kind of how he fits in. And, LT Overton, Keon Keeley being a big-bodied Bandit. Jordan Renaud's a little bit smaller, 265. Cavante Henry, I think, is up to 268. We know that Kelby Collins is at 275. And sometimes your Bandits, like I would view like a Kelby Collins and LT Overton, these are guys who are capable of not only playing out there on the edge, but you can start to move them further inside. Maybe you replace your tackle with a Bandit to where you can maybe get a little bit more juice and athleticism from that interior position. If it's an obvious passing situation, and then you either get two Wolves on the field and you plan on having them as your two edges, maybe you put another Bandit on the field like a Keon Keeley or a Jordan Renaud, who can play opposite the Wolf, that's where you start getting into, you can start having fun with it a little bit. Jordan Renaud, Keon Keeley, those are guys who I really don't see as inside players. They played the same position as LT Everton and Kelby Collins, but I don't think they offer necessarily the same level of versatility. So that's that position. And the reason that you have like the Wolf is going to be playing off the ball some. And the reason for that is you like to be multiple defensively. You don't want to be throwing just one thing constantly, a 4-2-5 defense constantly at defenses, because they kind of start to know what to expect. The more multiple, the more diverse you can be. You can play against different styles of offense, do a lot of different things. And when you've got the personnel, the different body types, you can do a lot of these different things. Like you saw Alabama last year, they were in 3-4 looks. They were in 4-2-5. They were in 4-3. They were in 3-3-5. And so that's what, that's kind of what they're looking for. And that Bandit can be a versatile piece, but the Wolf is the key one. He's going to be playing to the boundary side, the short side of the field. A very similar position to Alabama's Jack under Nick Saban, except for he's playing off the ball. When they go in those 3-man fronts where it's a true 3-man front, only 3 down linemen, and they take that Wolf off of the line of scrimmage, he's got to be able to play off the ball, be a comfortable second level defender, even though with certain guys, they'll play him a little bit more shallow. I think a guy like, Xavier Griffin, eventually, when you're going those 3-man fronts and he's playing Wolf, you can play him as an off-ball guy. You can get into a lot of different looks a lot easier, and he's comfortable doing all of it. You got Quay Russaw, who can do some of that, but you're not going to use him the same way that you're going to use Xavier Griffin. But he's got to be able to not only drop in coverage, he's got to be comfortable playing off the ball and seeing things a little bit differently. He's got to be a really good pass rusher when he's on the edge. That's why it's kind of difficult. And Jihad Campbell, when you've got that style of player who can play Wolf and play on the edge, but then when you're playing him in any of the off-ball looks, he's super comfortable doing that as well. That's where it can become really valuable. So that's kind of a difference. And, and why, it's important to have these different body types. A guy like Tank Jones, I think he's going to be a bandit. But I think Alabama's coaching staff, they're probably pitching to him both Wolf and Ben. I just think his body type, and is he going to be playing off the ball? Probably not. If he is playing Wolf, he's going to be one of those guys where a much smaller percentage of his snaps are off the ball. So it's a little bit of a different approach or different way to go about it. But Alabama, I love the creativity that they have with those two positions in particular, because it can really get you in and out of a lot of different looks.
Really interesting, man. I love it when you break things down and simplify it for people like me and everyone out there. So a great breakdown. And thank you for the question, Keith. Awesome question. Hey, guys, one other thing I want to tell you is take a look at our Rowback gear code, Crimson 20. Use that code to get 20% off all your gear at Rowback. Alabama shirts, polos, golf stuff, back to class. You just want to look good for church on Sunday. Rowback's got you covered. And our code is Crimson20. You get that code for each email address. And go to Dancing Rabbit with that Rowback gear on. Here's a question or a topic that you put on here that I love. Are we overlooking Brailsford's impact? I think the offensive line, we keep hearing every year that the offensive line is going to be great. Last year was going to be road grader. They were okay. But he was really good at center.
He was. And Andrew Dugan, or Duggan, I apologize, Andrew, if I mispronounced your last name. He asked this question, so I want to give him credit. He asked, since often overlooked, how big of a deal is it for the Bama offense and Ty Simpson in particular to have such a reliable center as Parker Brailsford? Mick, I think we've all seen what it can look like offensively when you don't have a reliable center. And Seth McLaughlin was really good for Ohio State this past season. He had the yips pretty bad. Right. His last season in Alabama, a lot of rolling snaps back there, and it created a ton of issues. And even though Jalen Milroe was going through his own struggles and trying to grow and develop, having to take your eyes off of the defense to reach down and get a snap that was way too low, and then try to go up and make reads and stuff, it just made everything through the timing of the offense off at times. it can be a massive problem. And Parker Brailsford is as good as it gets when it comes to consistency at that position. His size can hurt him at times. Do not get me wrong, but I've said this multiple times. He's really strong for his size. He understands leverage. He's a former wrestler, and so he understands all those leverage points. So he's a lot stronger than you would think for a guy his size. But the athleticism, the fact that you can pull your center, you don't see that too often because you got a guy that's got to snap the football and then get out there and space. It's just a lot more difficult. So having that type of player at your disposal, it gives Alabama's offense a lot of potential, and they can just do some different things that not a lot of offenses are doing. Because when you're pulling your center versus your guard or whatever, like that throws defenses off. So they can be multiple in how they attack you. He is such a fun player to watch, man. And I do think he's going to end up playing in the NFL. He's always going to be considered kind of an undersized center. And there are going to be times where you have to kind of work around that or live with that. But what he brings to the table as far as all the other things, he more than makes up for it, in my opinion. And I think him having two big, healthy guards in both Jaden Roberts and more than likely Cam Dewberry kind of flanking him, I think that's going to make a massive difference as far as Alabama's inside run in 2025. So I'm excited to see it for sure.
Awesome. And that's good news. I mean, because if this team's going to win, they're going to have to run the ball and block and give Ty Simpson time in the pocket to throw the football.
That's right.
He's not – it's going to be a totally different style offense with his skill set. Talking about time to throw the football, how do you manage – and I guess even leading into camp, running back room, Jam Miller, the rest of those guys, wide receiver room, Ryan Williams, the rest of those guys. How does Bama do that?
So Way Offsides Cotton asked this question, and it was a good one. He asked, how does Alabama manage the wealth they have at wide receiver and running back? Seems crowded in both rooms. And that is a great question. I think that this offense can live with rotation for sure. And you might even see the rotation expanded to get some of these guys involved. But you also got to, because I kind of get carried away with this sometimes. I think Alabama's got, 6, 7 receivers that they could probably rotate and get production from. But you also got to give guys an opportunity. If you're spreading that too thin, first of all, it's more guys that your starting quarterback has to build chemistry with. It's more guys who are getting those targets, and guys run, different routes in different ways, and they have different strengths. And so it can be kind of difficult if you get too far into it, unless you have to through injury. But, I do think that it's very possible that they're going to have a healthy 5-man rotation. Maybe they get into a 6 just because they have that many options. Like we think it's going to be Isaiah Horton and Ryan Williams and German Bernard. I think Rico Scott's going to be a part of that. I think Jalen Hill is going to be a part of that. Then you start talking about, Lazier Brooks. You talk about Cole Adams. Like, are these guys that are just really not going to play outside of mop-up duty and special teams and all that? It's like, like I said, you don't want to get too deep into that rotation, but you also, I don't know if you can leave those types of players on the bench. But, that is something that Alabama's going to have to manage. If they have injuries, the good part about when you have that kind of depth is even when you start sustaining injuries, if you start sustaining injuries, you can still have you don't have to condense your rotation. And now pretty much 3 guys are playing the whole game, and we got 1 guy that rotates in. You can continue to manage a 5 or 6 man wide receiver rotation with little to no impact. Now, depending, if Ron Williams goes down, obviously it's going to make a difference. If Isaiah Horton goes down as kind of being that primary size guy, that could certainly make a difference. But from having options who can consistently win in the passing game, that's kind of where it comes into play. And then at running back, that's the one that is because I don't think it's like, I like Alabama's running back room. I just don't think that it's to the point of the wide receiver room where you just see a bunch of just absolute studs. And it's like, it doesn't matter who's in there. You're getting great play. It could absolutely be a situation where one player emerges as giving you great play, and that ends up being like a guy that you ride. Because, and it's possible that multiple guys step up. I'm just saying we don't really know there as much. But I do think that they're probably going to rotate. Bare minimum is going to be 2. You're not going to see a Dylan Johnson at Washington type of situation where they only have 1 back. But bare minimum going to be 2. could end up being 3. I don't see it being 4. I love Draylon Washington or Daniel Hill or Richard Young, but I just don't see a situation where they're consistently rotating 4 guys. So it's a matter of kind of who loses out on being a part of that versus not. But one thing about it, we saw Alabama get banged up quite a bit last year at that position. So once again, you can kind of work into that depth a little bit and maintain a pretty strong rotation. It's just you don't feel as good about that room as you do wide receiver. So it's a good problem to have if you're Alabama, but it also you got to have buy-in and guys who are willing to kind of sit and wait their turn because it's just there's a lot of good options in both those rooms.
Guys, we're brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Philadelphia, Mississippi. You're talking about Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, which is the Augusta you can play. But also, don't forget about Silver Star and Golden Moon Casino. You're talking about 2 awesome casinos, an hour and a half from Tuscaloosa. That's the shortest casino trip you're going to make, and it's great. They've got amazing slots. They got the golf course. They got the sports book, which is like a Vegas-style sports book called the Timeout Sports Lounge. Great restaurants, Mama and Them's. If you're kind of looking more like American casual, or maybe you want to go upscale with Philip M. Steakhouse. But I'm telling you, great place, concert acts, all that stuff. And we appreciate them for being here with us. All right. Involved heavily, right? The tight ends. They went out in the transfer portal. They added 2. This was an area during the spring camp that was a big concern. So they tried to address that. How involved do you think that the tight end position is going to be this year? And what do you expect to see from them in this camp?
Yeah, Giga Gump is the one that asked this question. And, once again, it's a good question. I think Alabama having a catch first option at that position will make it different than last year. And I also think that, not having Jalen Milroe, you're still going to have running backs who are better outside runners than between the tackles. So your off tackle stuff, it's still got to be effective. Just the way that you want to run things offensively and keeping the offense as diverse as possible, you got to get quality blocking at that position. I think it's going to be a part of the passing game. But when I say it's going to be a part of the passing game, I don't automatically mean, hey, this is going to be a massive target guy or a massive targeted position. It's more of when you've got a threat at that position, when you have them running certain routes, you can create spacing and opportunities for others in the passing game where it's like, okay, if you're attacking the seams, you can open up a lot as far as the wide receivers. Like if you've got a guy who's really got to threaten those safeties, you can create some, as I said, some opportunities. So I don't think that they're going to be like you're not going to have a Brock Bowers. You're not going to have a Michael Mayer. You're not going to have that type of player where he's getting, a team leading or second or third. I think they're going to be probably 5th, 4th, maybe. I mean, it's possible for 4th, but I think even, more than likely you'll see 4 receivers ahead of them. And then maybe the tight end. But I think they'll make some timely plays. I think it's another threat that you have to respect in Alabama's offense. And, it's a good position to have as far as, like I said, this last year, they were so blocked first. And granted, I think Nick Sheridan did a pretty good job of at times creating some sneaky opportunities for those guys where the defense was caught off guard. If you could continue to maintain that, but you also got a guy who it's like he can create separation pretty consistently, and he's got great hands, and he's kind of he's a little bit of a bigger body guy. You can implement that in your offense, and it's just another element the defenses have to worry about. But do I think that they're going to be like target hogs or a massive piece of the passing game from a target standpoint? No, because I think Alabama's just too talented at wide receiver.
Well, that in a way, it's a good thing, when you got talent that you got to get to. But you never know. They could develop, like OJ did, in 2015 out of nowhere, like, hey, there's a guy that you could throw the football to. Had some big games when they really counted. Well, we're going to have football starting on Wednesday. We'll be back again tomorrow. Again, Cover Crimson Podcast Network. If you can't watch the show live or here on YouTube and you just want to listen, put us in the downloads. And we're brought to you by Pearl River. We appreciate them, but we appreciate you guys the most. Anything else, Clint, before we wrap it up on this Monday?
No, I just want to let people know that on Wednesday with them starting practice, it'll be, pretty early in the morning, and we'll be able to kind of watch that. We'll plan to go live on Wednesday to kind of give some live reactions if possible, assuming schedule works out. So be on the lookout for that. We won't be able to do live necessarily after every practice that we're able to view, but just with it being Wednesday and it being the first day, we'll try to do our best to go live, let people get any questions that they have, be a part of the conversation. But we will be going live quite a bit more as things continue to ramp up. So definitely want people to keep an eye out for that. And I look forward to it, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Roll Tide.
Escape to Pearl River Resort.